Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Anthony.
And this is Words and Numbers.
So, Anthony, what's new and exciting in our world this week?
Well, a couple things. We should start off by telling our listeners we have a new affiliation and a producer with...
And if I might interrupt, our viewers.
Yes, our viewers, right. Yeah, of course. What am I thinking? We've teamed up with an organization, CiVL, that's dedicated to, what is the word they use? Rebuilding civilization.
That's a tall order.
Yeah, and we'll do our little part here as we talk about things in politics and economics. But the fallout for our listeners is our listeners now get to be viewers also, as we'll be appearing on video. And because CiVL will be handling our producing, we're going to be able to ratchet up to 2 episodes a week.
Maybe even 3.
Yeah, well, let's get 2 under our belts first.
We'll see how it goes. That seems right. That seems right. But thank you to CiVL for having us. They've been a joy to deal with thus far, and we look forward to a long and fruitful relationship with them.
So my interesting thing for this week is a similarity between a Nobel Prize winner in medicine and the movie Jurassic World.
That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't think so either. And coincidentally, these 2 things crossed my path at the same time. My wife and I went to see Jurassic World recently, and I won't go into the story, but at the end of the thing, she turns to me in the movie theater and says, "Who was the villain?" And as I thought on it, I'm thinking, it's actually the heroine. Now, of course, that's not the way it was billed. It's not the way the script was written. The heroine is the heroine. But I argue the heroine was actually the villain. And I'll tell you a little bit about the story here to set the stage. Our heroine and the people who surround her are going to this island in the equatorial Earth, to obtain dinosaur blood with which they'll be able to cure some heart disease, right? And the movie ends with her and her posse saying, okay, we've got this dinosaur blood, we've gone through all of this stuff, it belongs to the world. We're not going to give it to the evil corporation, right, that sponsored this whole thing, that's going to be doing the research. We give it to the world. We're going to open source it. And as an economist, I have to paint her as the villain. Actually, there are 2 villains here. She's one of them. Because the fact of the matter is, she's committing the same error that Marxists fall into repeatedly. They begin their story after all the hard work has already been done. The entrepreneurs have taken their risks, the investors have taken their risks, they've invested their capital, and they built something. And then the Marxists come along and say, well, this should belong to everybody, which is in effect what she was doing. Yes, she and her posse were collecting the blood, but it was the corporation that funded the whole thing. It was a corporation that did the initial research, that discovered that this was a thing, that with this blood we could come up with this drug, and she's going to do the Marxist thing and say, well, this belongs to the world. Now, we can look at that and say, well, that's the right thing, because the drug will be cheap and everybody will get it, and that's absolutely correct. Just like the Marxists are absolutely correct. If the government nationalizes all the big corporations and hands the ownership over to the people, we all will be better off. Yeah, sure, okay, that's fine. But here's the thing. I point back to what I call the babysitter principle, which is, why do you pay your babysitter? And you don't pay your babysitter for the babysitting that's just happened, because the babysitting that's just happened is done, right? The babysitter can't take it back. You pay the babysitter so that the babysitter answers the phone the next time you call and want a babysitter.
Exactly so. Yep, exactly so.
And that's where everybody here goes off the rails. In the Marxist world, okay, everybody ends up owning the means of production, the profits are given back to the workers and all of that stuff. But that's the last companies you will ever see, because you remove the incentive to produce more.
And we've got the Venezuelan oil industry to point to.
Yes, exactly. Venezuela sitting on the single country that is sitting on the largest set of oil reserves in the world. And they had to import gasoline because they couldn't manage to get their industry working, because why? The government nationalized it.
And as a result of that nationalization, the entire thing fell apart, right? Nothing was maintained.
Right, right.
Corporations maintain assets. That's one of the things that they do. Governments, not so much.
Yeah, and maintain here means that you keep it up because the assets depreciate. They physically, literally fall apart. You've got to
Literally
repaint
fall
things
apart.
and repair things and all of that. Yeah.
Yep. And as if that weren't enough, I suspect, and I think most people suspect right now, that we're about to see the same sort of thing happen on a much smaller scale in New York City.
Yes, with I'm very interested to see what happens there with their socialist
Yes,
mayor.
Emily.
But I'm glad you brought that up because I said a moment ago that there were two villains in Jurassic Park. And you'll notice the second villain if you stop and say, okay, but hang on, if this corporation had gotten possession of this dinosaur blood, it would have come up with the drug and it would have sold the drug for tremendous amount of money per dose. And so lots of people wouldn't be able to afford it. And so only some people would get the drug and lots of people wouldn't. To which an economist would say, yeah, but if there's competition, other companies are going to want to get in on that. And in getting in on that, they'll bid the price. The competition will knock the price down. But in this movie, had they given the blood to the corporation and the corporation did what it was going to do, what I just laid out would not have happened. And here enters our second villain. It wouldn't have happened because the world governments in this movie had come together and agreed to make this band of equatorial region of the earth where the dinosaurs were off limits to everybody.
That sounds right.
In other words, the governments set up this corporation to be a monopoly.
Yep. And look, that's the only way monopolies exist.
Right. Yeah, largely speaking, now people are going to start waving their hands and say, what about natural monopolies? And a good friend of ours, Howie Bacher, once challenged me to name a single natural monopoly that can persist in the long run. And I couldn't do it.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't
In
do
the long run, they get replaced by alternative technologies. Now, I'm going on about Jurassic World. I introduced it by saying that it's got something similar to do with a Nobel Prize winner in medicine. Charles Rice, Nobel Prize winner in medicine, he was part of the team that has come up with a treatment or cure, I should say, for hepatitis C, has said it's a crime that a drug exists that could cure everyone, yet not everybody has access to it. I feel for you. I agree with the statement, but it's more complex than that. Charles Rice would have us give away, or have the company give away this treatment for free, and that's fine. Everybody would get the treatment to hepatitis C. That's superb, but like the babysitter, it's the last drug you will ever see.
Yeah, and, it bears mentioning that MDs don't typically study economics in any detail.
Right.
Right. And I had the same reaction many years ago when I read Albert Einstein's political meanderings. It was like reading a seventh grader's take on politics. Right now, he was a brilliant physicist, but as a political thinker, he was garden variety bad.
Yeah, and the fact is, if you or I held forth on physics, he would have the same opinion, rightly so, of us.
Rightly so. And we often, what's the word I'm looking for? Criticize? It seems a little too light. Popes, when they get busy with things other than religion.
Right, other than poping.
Right. Other than poping, that's right. Well, Ant, on a 4-star scale, what do you give the movie?
It's a solid 3.5.
So it's really good.
No. I mean, a 5 is really good. Oh, you said on a 4 scale. I'm sorry. I'm used to 5. On a 4, it's a 2.5. It's all right. It's one. I developed a mental scale for movies that I find very intuitive. And the top level is, it's a movie that is so good, I would go back and see it I would pay to see it multiple times. Next level down, it's a movie that was well worth seeing. I'm happy I paid to see it once, but I wouldn't pay to see it a second time. Next level down, it's a movie that maybe isn't worth the ticket price, but it was worth removing the uncertainty of whether it would have been worth the ticket price. moving it
You're
from
really
an unknown
overthinking
to
this.
a known, right? And then
You're
the
really overthinking this.
the bottom list is, of course, it's not even worth. I could have been happier not knowing whether I'd like the movie than to sit through the thing.
So better off mowing your lawn.
Right? Yeah, exactly. This
Yeah.
one, I'd give it that rating of it's worth the ticket price to convince to take away the uncertainty as to whether you would have liked it.
Well, stay tuned for next week because I'll have Superman to talk about.
Oh,
Going to see it
excellent,
Monday.
excellent.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it. So I want to bring our attention to south of the border, to our friends to the south, the Mexicans, who, tearing a page out of our playbook, are now becoming hostile, let's just say, to American immigrants.
Oh, really? They're becoming hostile to American immigrants to Mexico. Are there that many American immigrants to Mexico?
Not that many, but there's a fair bit who retire there, right? Because the cost of living in Mexico is dramatically lower, and yet it's still like living in the West. So people do retire there. But now the Mexicans have apparently had it, and they're coming out swinging against what they call gentrification. And they don't want that American money if it comes with Americans. And I find this to be endlessly amusing. Now, my heart goes out to Americans who uprooted their lives to retire there, but this is the danger of retiring to a foreign country.
Yep.
And everybody says, I hear this constantly, I'm not staying in the United States. Okay, Pumpkin, where are you going? And there's never a particularly compelling answer to that. Now, I look around for places to retire to, and I was thinking Mexico might be a good option. I also think Portugal would be lovely. There's
Yeah.
a big American expat community in Portugal.
I've got my eye on
But-
Portugal also.
Yeah, but when things turn politically, you're out in the wind.
Yeah.
And you know, they're at the mercy now of Mexican mobs.
Oh, my.
Well, yeah, the Mexican mobs are running through the street, smashing windows and things like this. And it's quite indiscriminate at this time. I'll put a story in the show notes so people can read up on it a little bit. But it's one of those things where I understand, I get it, and yet everybody loses. The Mexicans are going to lose. The Americans in Mexico are going to lose. Everybody's going to lose as a result of this. A rising tide lifts all boats, even if it doesn't seem like it at first. Which, of course, brings us to the foolishness of the week. Have you a prediction?
I have not been paying attention to the news, just keeping my nose above water on things to do with interest rates and inflation. But the politics, I have not read the Wall Street Journal in about 9 months.
Well, my subscription is lapsed. I haven't read it in 9 months either. Anyway,
What is foolish?
we return, of course, to our commander-in-chief and big toe, Donald Trump, who, while in Liberia, asked the Liberian president where he learned English. Because apparently it was so good that Trump couldn't fathom where he might have learned it, not realizing that English is the official language of Liberia.
In his defense, I didn't know that, but it's not my job to know that. It is.
You didn't get a briefing before our episode today. As Air Force One travels, people should be telling him things. You know, things like this, because this is just foolish. But at least given the foolishness of the week last week, we return to the lighthearted nature of the segment.
We're happy to announce that Words and Numbers is now part of the CiVL network. CiVL is a new streaming platform dedicated to upgrading civilization by exploring better ways for people to organize, innovate, and thrive. At CiVL, we believe that societies flourish when their members uphold the civil equality of all people and engage with one another through cooperation. CiVL seeks great minds from around the world to share bold ideas for fostering healthy, dynamic societies. By creating space for honest disagreement among people who share a commitment to building a better future, CiVL offers a refreshing alternative to divisive punditry and insular echo chambers. Words and Numbers will remain freely available, but those who subscribe to CiVL will gain access to exclusive content, including our regular live streams. CiVL members also get access to conversations with many remarkable people who work to build a better society. For more information and to subscribe, visit CiVL.com, that's CiVL.com, and use the code Words and Numbers, that's one word, for 50% off an annual subscription. Your support helps us continue to advocate for a more civil society. This week, I want to talk... Let me set the stage here. I recorded a video at the Liberty Con, which is Students for Liberty's big event back in January, and it just aired a couple days ago on the show Dad Saves America. And in this, we went on. This is a like 2.5 hour interview.
I checked into it and I thought 2.5 hours of Anthony Davies? No, thank you.
Yeah, not even I could watch that. But the thing is there on YouTube, and of course people are commenting. And I was saying, we talked about lots of things, but one of the things I was talking about was the fact that Americans seem not to understand how much better off their lives are today versus the past. And we talked about why that might be so, and I point to the media for some of it. But people were just excoriating me in the YouTube comments, saying, I don't know what's going on, and maybe some things are better, some things are cheaper, but certainly not. And several people mentioned the same three things: houses, higher education, and cars. And
you got to point out that that's right.
Well, it's kind of right. One of them is absolutely right.
Let me say this: those things are more expensive, but they're also much, much better.
Yeah, that's where. Well, yeah, two of the three are much better.
Three.
Yeah,
two of the three,
and that's worth talking about. But there's maybe a higher level conversation to be had here. And now that we're just joining our friends on CiVL, this might be a good time to talk about it. And that is that here on Words and Numbers, for ever since our inception, whenever that was, 2016 or so, we have been committed to following the facts and reason wherever they lead. Understanding we're going to get things wrong, we have our own biases, but to the extent that we can hold true to that, following the facts, following the reason, we'll tend to get it wrong much less. And James, I tell you, because I interacted, I commented, responded to some of the comments on YouTube, and what came to me was this sense that the people who were arguing against me weren't arguing from fact. It was as if they had a religious devotion, and I mean that seriously, to this idea that the world is becoming a worse place, and they were deeply offended that I would challenge their religion.
Well, the world is in some respects becoming a worse place, and in most respects becoming a much better place.
Yeah, that's the thing. It is. I mean, you could point to specific things that are becoming worse, and certainly specific people. Somebody said on there, well, you can't tell me cars are cheaper. I haven't experienced this. And the fact is, what an individual experiences is completely irrelevant to this statement. We're talking about people in general.
And this is the difference, and we talk about this a lot, between anecdotes and data.
Yeah.
Right, what happens to you matters, but it also matters what happens to everybody else.
It does. When you're dealing with anecdotes, the problem is you can find an anecdote to support any position.
And literally anything.
So
that's right.
They're not at all helpful in a discussion like this. You need to go to the data and ask what's common, what's typical.
All right, so what's common? What's typical?
Well, here's the interesting thing, because I went and pulled, and I had not pulled this data for some time, and I pulled it expecting to find that they were basically right, that things have become more expensive, and I was going to say things like, okay, but that gets mitigated by certain things. Well, it turns out that that's not really the case. So let me throw out some facts, and I picked the dates I'm going to say to you are simply the dates I picked because they're in response to somebody who said something on the YouTube comments.
Now, like the people who commented, I'm already angry with you because I've been to grocery stores.
Right.
Yeah. Things are more expensive. We just experienced real inflation.
Yeah, we did, and that's a little bit of a fly in the ointment that we experienced this 2022 inflation, which makes things relative to 2020. Things today are way expensive, but relative to 1980, relative to 1920, they absolutely aren't.
Right, yeah, and this is the thing, right? The longer your horizon, the more accurate your results.
Yeah, and I think someone might say in response, okay, but what was going on in 1920 doesn't matter, because what matters is I bought food in 2020 and I bought food in 2024, and the food in 2024 is more expensive. And I get that, but we're not asking the question, what is your particular experience? I was talking about how humans have been progressing generation to generation. There are going to be hiccups in this, but generally speaking, generation to generation, things are moving in an unequivocally good direction.
People are always, they get on me pretty hard every time I say violent crime is down. And yet, if you look at the chart from, say, 1990 to right now, it's down so much that it probably doesn't even exist by 1993 standards.
Right.
1993 was the height of the violent crime problem in the United States. Mm-hmm. It's down like a rock falling into a canyon.
Right.
And, okay, does that mean that you're never going to experience violent crime? No. It means you're far less likely to.
Yeah, versus a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, someone's going to say to you back, that can't be right because I feel scared.
Yeah, your feelings have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I agree. They have nothing to do with the question. However, I want to point out that people feel scared, not all the time, but a lot of the time, because of what they perceive to be happening from the television. Television shows something and you just think that's the way the world is. I've been watching with my wife, we've been binging on cop shows recently on Netflix and Amazon Prime. And as we do this, I'm reminded of things I've read over the years, like this business about, well, you get a phone call when you're arrested. Apparently that's not a thing. Hollywood just made this up.
Can confirm.
They've got to read you your rights when they put the handcuffs on you.
No, they don't.
No, that's not
They
the
do
thing.
not.
Now, they do at some point, right?
At some point.
And my favorite, which was some show we were watching just the other night, it was Jurassic World. They're in a tunnel, small, maybe 10 feet across, a bunch of people in a tunnel, and our heroine pulls out a gun and starts shooting at one of the dinosaurs. Come on! All of those people should have been deaf for the rest of their lives to be in a concrete tunnel that enclosed with a gun going off, right? Or you see cop shows them shooting the gun from inside the car. Same thing. The thing is so loud it would deafen everybody. I mean, like permanently. But what happens is we see this so often, we just think, well, of course that's the way it is. It's not the way it is. And the same thing is the case with the media. We keep seeing the stuff the media shows us, but life isn't really that way. They show us the bad stuff.
The media is not going to show you regular life. There's no story there.
Right.
If it bleeds, it leads, and you're going to see the aberrations. So, were people murdered today? Probably. You'll see it on the news. Were people murdered in your town, in your neighborhood? No.
Yeah.
And somehow, there's this gigantic disconnect between what people know to be true in their own lives and what they think to be true everywhere.
Yeah,
or I should say everywhere else.
And you have challenged our listeners many times over the years, and I love the thing that you do of, you say, all right, you did it last in COVID when they were saying something like 10% of the population was dying of COVID or whatever it was, and you said to our listeners, look around in your own lives. How many people that you personally know have died of COVID?
Because if it's 10%, you know plenty. And yet, nobody ever wrote back and said, yeah, here's a list. Now, I'm sure some of our listeners do, in fact, know people. The laws of large numbers start to apply. But that so few of them did that, what I said was generally inoffensive to everybody, is telling. It's really telling. And now I'm seeing all the Facebook cranks in my world saying things like 74% of everybody who took the COVID jab are dying.
74?
Please.
74.
Yeah, something like it. Right. It's just idiotic. And then you read a little bit into it and you find out that they're really talking about a narrow gap of a certain kind of people, and even then it's asinine.
Right.
Right? 74% of any demographic, you're going to know dozens of people in it.
Yeah.
Did 74% of them die? No. No.
So to go back to the thing, I would say a viewer feels scared because that's what the media shows you, scary stuff. I have a friend who says, you will never see the headline, 40,000 planes landed in the U.S. today.
Landed safely.
Safely, right. You're never going to see that, despite the fact it happens every day. Well, because it happens every day, you're never going to see it.
Yeah, I forget where I was. I was in another city just recently. It's kind of sad that you can't remember these things. But I was out walking around. Oh, it was New York City. I was in Manhattan. And I was out walking around like 11:30, 12 o'clock. There were all these young girls walking around with earbuds in.
With earbuds, yeah, I saw that too, yeah.
Totally oblivious to their surroundings, which can only mean they're safe,
yes.
And they know it, right? And you see this over and over again in hundreds of different ways. This is just a cheap, easy example. But almost everywhere I go, almost all the time, everybody's feeling pretty safe.
Yeah. And the numbers bear that out. When you talked about violent crime dropping in this country, it's not just dropping a bit. It's dropped something like 90%.
It's over 90%,
yeah.
From 1993. Well, I mean, wow. How'd that happen? That's what we should be studying.
Right, yeah.
How and why that occurred.
Yeah,
and yet I don't hear theories about this.
Right. Instead, we ask the question, why do we have crime? We should be asking, why do we not have crime? And so,
right,
too.
Because then we could do that some more.
Yeah, and economists say the same thing about wealth. You know, we're all wringing our hands saying, what causes poverty? To which economists say, no. Poverty is the natural state.
That's right. We are born into poverty.
Yeah, you should be asking, what causes wealth? That's the cool thing.
How is it that you came out of your mother and went home to an air-conditioned home?
Yes, right.
That's the interesting question. But let's get back to cars, education, and was it healthcare?
So let's talk about houses first, because this is the big one that people point to. I'm going to do 1980 versus 2024. 1980, the median U.S. home sold, and this is the numbers come from the Federal Reserve. And it's U.S. homes sold because in this YouTube conversation, people were saying, well, it's not the price of the houses, it's the price of the land they sit on. And you can parse all of that. You don't have to worry about it. This statistic is asking how much did it cost? So the house, everything, whatever's in it, the land it sits on, what's the median sale price? And this is of homes sold. So it's not necessarily new homes, it's all the homes that were sold. In 1980, $65,000. That's the house in the middle. Some will be more, some will be less, but the one in the middle, $65,000. Today, 2024, the house in the middle, $420,000.
And what is $60,000 in 2025 dollars?
And this is the thing. People do the inflation adjustment, and I'm going to argue here that that's not the appropriate adjustment to make. Look, in the end, what inflation adjustments are trying to do is to get at the answer, what does this cost me? What is my purchasing power? A much better way to do it, instead of trying to do the inflation calculation, and the reason I'm going to step away from it is because the way we calculate inflation introduces a bunch of subjectivity that we can sidestep here. The subjectivity.
Can I ask another?
Yeah.
Can I ask another question then? How many hours would it take me to buy a house?
That's the question. That's the thing that we can ask that doesn't invoke any of the inflation nonsense. Okay, so
right.
Here I have it.
So you've already worked this out?
Yes, I have it on my spreadsheet right here.
Oh, you and your spreadsheets.
1980, the median full-time weekly wage was $260. In 2024, the median full-time weekly wage was $1,160.
It's a significant difference.
Yeah, so what we've got here is a situation where from 1980 to 2024, the price of the median house went up by a factor of 6.5. The median full-time weekly wage went up by a factor of 4.4.
Okay, so it didn't exactly keep pace, but it came reasonably close.
Yeah, it's not off by a factor of 10, but, we are lagging
Right.
behind, except this is not the end of the story. And here the story gets very interesting. The median home back in 1990 was 1,600 square feet. The median home today is 2,150 square feet. So the median home today is about 35% larger.
Yeah.
Now,
I think that would work out to what, two large rooms?
Yeah, probably. Well, I'm in Excel, so let's do it here. One minus the other, 550 square feet. Yeah, that's
So more than two.
that's
more,
a, yeah.
Look, a standard bedroom is about 10 by 10 or 100 square
Yeah.
feet.
And, square footage of a house, they don't count the garages. Well, it was one garage back in 1980. It's two today is the typical.
What?
Oh, you have like three, don't you?
Four.
Here's what we can do with all of these numbers, and this is where we get to the thing you were asking. I can ask, 1980, 1 square foot of housing was what fraction of the median weekly wage?
That would be a really good measure.
And that's 15%. 15% of the weekly median wage was 1 square foot of housing. Now, that doesn't mean that 15% of your wages went to housing, because when you buy the house, you're not paying cash, you have monthly mortgage payments.
Yep.
So your out-of-pocket's going to be much less than this. But if you just think about the ratio of the cost per square foot to your income, it's 15%. Today, 17%.
Yeah, and let's not forget the batch of government regulations that require all kinds of things in 2025 that were never even on the table in 1980.
Yeah, 1980, I'd venture to say that most middle-class households did not have air conditioning.
Yeah, we didn't.
Yeah, I can remember we were middle class to upper middle class, and it was, I can remember, it was like it was 1980 when we got our first air conditioner. It was one of those wall units. So
Yeah,
basically,
no, we got a
yeah, you're right. So there were 2 rooms in the house that were cooled. The rest were not.
Yeah, our kitchen felt great. Our bedrooms were on the other end of the house,
Yeah.
not so great.
Yeah. Now,
I remember strategically setting up fans in the hallway to blow
the cold air down.
These are the things. Look, these are the things that regular people did. Now I walk up to a magic box on the wall and press a button.
Right. So when we're done here, the difference is about, do all the math, and I would say on a square footage basis, compared relative to what we earn, houses are about 9% more expensive today than in 1980.
And the real question to ask, the question that nobody ever asks is, are you 9% better off?
Right.
Right? Because if you're spending 9% more, it should be at least 9% better. And I would argue it should probably be 18 or 27% better.
Yeah, and I think the easy way to answer that is to say, would you be willing to take a 10% cut on the price of the house in exchange for downgrading it to 1980 quality? If the answer is no, then that 9% is well worth it to you.
Almost nobody would do it.
Right.
There might be a couple of places in the country where the natural breeze offers enough comfort, right? And you don't need the square footage in your own life and this kind of thing. But almost nobody would make that deal. I wouldn't. Not in 100 years would I make that deal.
So let me restate this, because it's an important number. I'm not saying that houses today are 10% more expensive. They're much more expensive than they were in 1980. What I'm saying is, on a price per square foot basis, relative to our incomes, they're 9% more expensive.
Right. And wouldn't it have been fun if we didn't have the explosion in home prices that we've had in the last 2-3 years?
Right.
Because then it wouldn't even be close to 9%.
Right, then it'll actually be less. Now, one of the things that people have said in response is, well, yeah, but how do you explain the fact that it takes 2 incomes now to maintain a household, whereas in the 1980s it only took 1?
That's the wrong way to look at it.
Go tell me. I've got an answer. Give me yours.
No, I mean, look, you have to ask how much work it takes.
Ah, yes.
Right? Because 2 incomes is a new thing, but 2 workers was always a thing.
Yeah, 2 workers were always a thing. What changed between 1980 and now is that second worker's being paid.
Yeah, now we have dishwashers and washing machines, and maintaining a house isn't exactly a full-time job anymore. I would say that back when my mother was keeping our house, it was more than a full-time job. She was probably at it 60, 80 hours a week.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, at this point, how many people spend that kind of time keeping house? And the answer is none of them. And if your house is that bad, you go to work and you hire somebody to clean it once a week.
Right.
Right, things like this. But women entered the workforce largely because their work at home was halved and then halved again.
Let me switch gears, because we talked about housing. The other thing people talked about were cars. Cars are a little bit harder to deal with here, because I'm using data from the Fed, and the Fed isn't giving me the median car price. They're instead giving me the price index for new cars. It makes it harder to talk about, but you can end up with the same numbers.
All right, well, hold the phone and tell me what a price index on cars is.
You can kind of think of it as the average price of cars, except it isn't measured in dollars, and so you can look at it. In fact, I could tell you, in 1980, the new car price index was 88. That gives you no information. But
no
if I tell you that the new car index in 2024 is 178, now you've got information. It tells you that the average new car today is roughly twice as expensive as the average new car in 1980.
Yeah, okay.
So people are going to point to that and say, see, I told you cars are twice as expensive. And this is where I think it has to come back to our wages. The median full-time worker in the U.S. is earning 4.4 times what he earned in 1980. So yes, the price of the car has doubled, but the income has more than quadrupled. So relative to your income, a car today is half as expensive as a car in 1980.
And that's interesting, right? I would have guessed that the answer would have been worse than that. Right?
Yeah.
Because I know all the regulations that go into cars that add to the expense. The cars we drive now bear almost no resemblance to the cars you and I drove when we were 18.
Yeah, and part of that's actually built into the number, because when you're dealing with a price index, they're adjusted for quality. So
everything is somehow considered.
Right, everything's considered here. The fact that cars are safer and they have all the electronics and all of that, that's baked into the numbers.
You know, I also get roughly 4 times the mileage I used to get in my first car.
You get 4 times the mileage in terms of gas, but also like maybe twice or 3 times the useful life.
Oh, God, yeah.
I can remember when I was a kid, a car would last 5 years, you know? Rarely did you see a car with 100,000 miles.
And 100,000. I don't even consider getting a new car until I've had it for 10 years and it's clicking on 200,000. And even then, it's probably got another third of a life left.
Right, exactly.
Now, mind you, I'm going to piss a lot of people off here. I'm not buying Chevys.
Right.
Everything I buy comes from our friends in Japan, who make a better car that's cheaper to maintain. The Germans make lovely cars too, but I can't afford basic service on them.
Yeah, but aren't the Japanese cars made in Georgia?
Yeah, sometimes, but they're made according to Japanese standards.
Right.
Which just makes them better. And I've actually seen some people dig into this, and they claim that when you're buying a car, and if you're going to buy a Japanese car, you should go out of your way to buy one that was made in Japan.
Oh, really? Huh.
That it is actually considerably better. Now, I haven't looked into that myself, so I don't know how to test the veracity of the claim. It passes the smell test, but that's never good enough, right? That's the first cut. But, cars are just simply different than they once were. And I've said this a bunch of times before, and this gets back to your anecdote problem. I have said in front of very big rooms many times that when I was a young man, 16, 17, 18, we all knew someone who died in a car accident.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
We all knew somebody who was paralyzed in a car accident.
Yep.
Now I just know people who walk away without a scratch from these disastrous wrecks. And there was one time I said this, and a young woman burst out into tears. And she said, "That's not true. My brother died in a car accident." And I said, you don't want to hear this, and I don't want this to sound callous. There are 150 people in this room, and you're the only one.
Yes.
Now, my heart breaks for you, but let's be realistic. You're still driving in cars, right? It's not so dangerous that we all don't do it.
Yeah, I think there's...
And isn't that something?
There's two statements here, and both of them are true, that her brother died in a car accident. That's statement one. Statement two, very few people die in car accidents.
Comparatively speaking, it's a drop in an ocean. And look, I'm willing to pay extra for that kind of safety. Who wouldn't be?
We talked about the two things that went down in price. The one thing that's gone way up in price, and I think has gone way down in quality.
Way down in quality. That's right.
Is higher education.
Our former line of work. Each of us.
And I would argue here that and somebody pointed out in the discussion on YouTube. Somebody pointed out and said, "Well, look at this. This is clearly a market failure." To which I responded, "No, this is a government failure."
So there's no market.
Right. The reason that higher education has become expensive and lower quality is because the government is interfering in the market, and it's setting up a guild, an oligopoly, a cartel.
It's a cartel.
Yeah, and the cartel is doing what cartels do.
That's right. They decide that they first decide what we need is an accreditation body to come in and pass judgment whether it's good enough. And by the way, we've all already passed. And then the accreditation people start to keep other endeavors out of the field.
Right.
Now, you and I talked about starting a college for years.
And we're eminently qualified to do so.
Eminently qualified, and it would have been fantastic. And we know so many people who are willing to give up the career they had for the career they might have if we were successful.
Yep.
And there was no way we could do it.
Because of the cartel.
The barriers to entry were so high that there was no way we could do it. We couldn't even establish a library that would have passed muster. Do you need a library anymore? I mean, look, I love libraries. I go to them. I would live in one if I could. But how often do I have to do research in a library now? And the answer is never.
Never, right.
Literally never. So why is that the requirement? And it's the requirement to keep people like us from starting college.
Right. It's to stop us from doing exactly what we wanted to do.
What we wanted to do. And look, I am never, at this point in our history, going to side with or make excuses for or come to the aid of the American university system. I'm just not. It's declining severely, and it's getting way more expensive. So you lose on both ends of the deal. Mm-hmm. It's less good than it once was, and it's way more expensive than it ought to be.
Right, right.
So people are right. If they're pointing to college as an example of something that's far worse than it once was, they're right. Now, we should say that there was a time, and it's not too long ago, when it wasn't the dream of every young person in the country to go to college. Right? I mean, it was like 15, 20, 25%. Mm-hmm. So we're sending many more people to college than we should. And as we did that, the government started making it possible for us to do that by guaranteeing the loans.
And I think in a sense, James, we almost have to send so many people to college because our primary and secondary schools have become so bad.
That's right. College is high school.
College is teaching what high schools used to teach.
The first 2 years of college are now high school.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to say about that. If I had my life to live again, I don't think I would get a PhD.
Really?
I don't. I think maybe I would have become an electrician. I mean, look, you work 9 to 5 or whatever, 5 days a week, and you don't take your work home with you. And you're incredibly well compensated.
Right, yes.
Well, I work for money. Why wouldn't I do something that didn't bother me? Right? I mean, do you really want to go back and work at a college again? I miss teaching a lot. I was great at it. I don't miss colleagues. I don't miss
faculty
administration. I literally miss nothing other than teaching young people.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have the same opinion. Mm-hmm.
I really miss teaching young people. It was incredibly rewarding. I loved every minute of it. Everything else goes straight to hell, and I would never care.
Words and Numbers is a CiVL original podcast. James and I work with CiVL to advance their mission of upgrading civilization by exploring ideas that promote civic equality and cooperation. We believe that the most pressing issues humans face, war, poverty, debt, tribalism, arise from coercive institutions that bring out the worst in us. We're working with CiVL to rethink how people can employ voluntary solutions to these and other problems. We invite you to explore CiVL's new platform at civil.com. That's CIVL.com. Our friends at CiVL have asked us something that many of our listeners have asked us many times over the years, particularly on episodes where we're dealing with something more controversial. Many people have said to me, so what? What do you do?
So what?
So our friends at CiVL have prompted us to add a new section to Words and Numbers, and tentatively it's titled, So What?
So what?
So what can you do
Not
about
a bad
this?
Title. I don't know what you can do about it, right? Because the first two things that we talked about, cars and houses, I don't really see a problem. I really don't. I wish they were both much cheaper because I would like to afford better ones. But I can read data and know what I'm up against and what I would have been up against in 1980, and that they're two completely different things. And things have, in fact, gotten better. College, on the other hand, is a cesspool. And if you ask me what with the colleges, I would say, first, get government out of the business of student loans. Put it back in the hands of lending institutions. We used to call those banks. And let the banks deal with the risk, because loans are all about risk.
I'll do you one better there. I think there is a brilliant, because I came up with it.
I already know what you're going to say, and I agree. I agree with you wholesale.
There's a brilliant solution here to the college problem, in this college/student loan problem, and that's the following. Colleges are sitting on endowments that are so large that the typical college would be able to loan all of its students the money they need for their tuition completely out of the endowment. And then as the students graduated and earned money, they'd pay those loans back. It would go back into the endowment and become available for younger students. Even the small four-year liberal arts colleges, with some exceptions on the edges, have large enough endowments to do this. So here's the solution. Get rid of government-subsidized student loans and require that colleges loan to the students directly out of their endowments. Now that's going to do two things. The first is it's going to get taxpayers off the hook for all of this money. And you talk about forgiving student loans, and really there's no forgiveness. It's just forcing the taxpayers to pay it.
And that's not even the best thing.
No, the best part is you will see overnight the entire landscape of universities change, because their incentives will change from what it is now. Get as many students in the door as you can so you can suck up that sweet, sweet government money. It will change to generate courses, majors that give our students high earning power, because they need that to pay us back for the money we loaned them.
Yep, it's a return on investment, and it's the only way to look at it. And it would be the same if it was required over 5 or 10 or 30 years. That would be wholly irrelevant, the length of the term. But what you would see, and I always pick on the exact same thing I made up from whole cloth years ago. You would see never again a major in medieval lesbian poetry because there's no market for it.
Right.
Not because it's not good in and of itself. It might be. There might be fascinating things to learn there, but there's no return on it. Where is the return? The STEM fields. The humanities do pretty well, actually, as these things go. It's not perfect, but people who major in the humanities do better than I think most people realize.
And it's not to say that nobody will study Elizabethan poetry. Rather,
no, that's right. If you have the means, go right ahead.
Well, if you have the means, and I would say there is a market for that. It's just way, way smaller than what you would think, given the number of people who currently study it.
Yep, I think that's all exactly right. And I would like to see some version of this, even if it were only half or a quarter to start with, right? Get universities thinking about the long-term prospects of the people who graduate from those institutions. And with guaranteed student loans, the colleges and universities don't have to care about that at all, and they don't. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that they don't. I worked in them. I was in the meetings. They do not care.
So that's the first so what. I will give an answer to so what about the housing and the cars and all of that. And that is, and it's going to sound trite, but it's absolutely the right answer. Count your blessings. Look around at your life. Don't look at what's on the television. Look around at your life and take account of all the things that you have that you're currently taking for granted. The fact that you could walk into a grocery store in the dead of winter and buy fresh fruit at affordable prices. That is
astonishing.
It's astonishing. That's something that's not supposed to happen. And it happens so regularly we don't even think of it.
Yeah, no, a grocery store is just a bunch of miracles under one roof.
Yeah.
It's astonishing. And look, Ant, I'll tell you, it's 111 degrees outside here today. It's 71 degrees inside my office.
Yeah, right. Also,
yes,
something
yes,
that shouldn't be happening.
Yes, please. More of that, please. If I could afford it, it would be 67 degrees in my office. But, we have limits.
The fact that you could walk into the kitchen and turn a faucet and water comes out of multiple temperatures, and you don't have to worry that there are bugs in it or something.
No, it's perfectly clean. I mean, your life is a series of miracles from the perspective of your grandfather.
Yeah, just your grandfather, right.
Not your great-great-great-grandfather, your grandfather. And I'm reasonably confident that when you're already a grandfather, and maybe I will be one day too, when our grandchildren grow up, they will be able to say the same thing. And that's remarkable, and it's almost universally true generation to generation.
So item 1 is count your blessings. Item 2 is when you watch the news, and you're going to, because despite my protestations, people keep watching the news, keep it in your head that you are not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the worst parts of the world as they are.
By definition, you're looking mostly at outliers.
Yes.
And as long as you can remember that, look, I don't want you to think there's no danger in the world. There most certainly is. And you should be cognizant of it, and you should take steps to avoid it. But it shouldn't ruin your life.
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to avoid it if you think that it's everywhere around every corner. You're going to miss the actual danger while you try and avoid the fake danger.
That's exactly right. And, I don't know what to tell people on that because it's hard. It's hard to remember that what you saw on the news is probably never going to happen to anybody you have ever known. But it might.
But it might.
I know people who have been murdered. Multiple people who have been murdered, right? Okay. It's a drop in the bucket compared to the number of people I have known. It happens. It just doesn't happen that often. And you have to stop losing your mind about this kind of thing because it actually takes away from the life you do have.
And I'll add one more thing. Be careful about repeating things and be careful about people who confidently repeat things. Like, everybody knows housing is more expensive. Actually, that's not the case. In fact, I have found when it comes to things economic, the things that I would put under the heading of quote unquote everybody knows, I'd say 90% of that stuff is false.
Yeah, I think that's generally right of political things as well. So there you go. Our first so whatever. Not bad. We could do better. I promise we will do better. And we'll see you next time. Until that happens, be nice to each other.
See you next week, James. Get Words and Numbers on CiVL.com and on CiVL's TV and mobile apps. Regular episodes are free. Sign up for an annual membership to support our show and for access to member-exclusive content.